What's up, Duke fans? Welcome to the Devil's Den podcast. I'm your host, Josh Smith, joined by co-host Raul and Shu. We're happy to welcome back with us. We got Brian Geisinger, writer at 247 Sports, co-host of the Buzzbeat podcast, does a lot of stuff over at Substack too. Got a new podcast. We might talk a little bit about that too, the Deep Drop. Maybe get into that a little bit, but we figured we would have him back in. We had Brian to cover the draft on the preview side for Duke. We talked a lot about Kon. It was kind of a little bit of a pipe dream. I don't know, Brian, if you thought that he was going to get to Charlotte at that point. He ends up going fourth. They pick up Sion James at 33. They ship out Mark Williams. We'll get into that. And then obviously we want to talk a little bit about your article with Jordan Smith Jr. in the 26 class for the Devil's Den. Brian, let's just start with the NBA stuff. I think that's the most relevant. We saw the Hornets come in. I listened to y'all's podcast on the Buzzbeat talking about, how much we should celebrate that kind of like preseason championship, and does it mean so? I'm not gonna lie, man. It was pretty cool for me to just have to win something tangible. And obviously with having two Duke guys there, with Kon coming in, being the warrior, blood on the face, like the whole bag was there, right? Like the whole Kon experience. I guess we'll start at the top then. Walk us through draft night, starts getting there. You're starting to hear a little bit of buzz, and then boom, Charlotte pulls the trigger on Kon at 4. What was the kind of surprise level at that stage?
Honestly, it was relatively low. I was not certain they were going to draft Kon, and I think the sort of like the potential appeal of someone like Ace Bailey, you just sort of never know, just given his sort of like length, shooting archetype, and just sort of his pedigree. He's a much younger prospect too. And I thought Trey Johnson was another guy that was probably on radars as well. But I figured it was going to be one of those three guys, assuming VJ Edgecombe didn't fall to 4. I think if Edgecombe falls to 4, let's say Philadelphia takes, Bailey at 3 or whatever. I think they made the right pick taking VJ, but I think there's a very strong possibility that Charlotte takes VJ over Kon. But I would say it was probably a couple of weeks out from the draft, and I just had sort of gotten to the point kind of on my own. And when one of my co-hosts on the pod, James, he and I had sort of gotten to the spot around the same time. It seemed like of just like, if VJ falls to 4, you take him. If he's not there, just draft Kon. Just go with him. And it was probably not too much longer after that, I started, whether it was sort of just like chatter from behind the scenes, you're hearing about how Kon's been in, the Hornets didn't like release publicly, like who's been in for workouts, but you just, you hear whispers about who's popping in. And at some point too, I think it was either, Jonathan Givony, formerly of ESPN, which is like a little hard to believe, or one of the other sort of like, high profile mocks had Kon at 4. I think Sam Vecini had him at 3 or 4 too. So it sort of seemed like, and it was weird. It was interesting. It was like the further I got from Duke's season and the more I was going back and like rewatching games or rewatching halves or plays or whatever from Kon, the more it was like, this guy was just unbelievable last season. And like, it was obvious during the time, but then I think when you really start to think about how many little different things he was doing offensively, and his strength and the shooting and the footwork and the compete level and all of these sorts of things, and you're thinking like, that guy, he's so good, he's so malleable, you should be able to just copy and paste him onto any team, right? And I don't know if Kon's ever going to be an all-star type player. And this is sort of like where I got with it before the draft. And I still sort of feel this way too. Like, but I do think guys with his combination of like dribble, pass, shoot, and his unselfishness and his compete level, like those guys do have a pretty like, not just like a solid like hit rate in the NBA, but I think whether he's an all-star or not, I think he's a guy that you can use to like funnel offense through. You funnel usage through. And he's a guy that I think projects as someone who's going to make a lot of money and be a really important NBA player, in Charlotte for the foreseeable future. So I was pretty happy with the development. I will say I was in Vegas for the first couple of days of Summer League, and Kon had a not terrible, but like a tough showing in the first game against Utah.
Yep.
And then he with his ankle injury, he missed the second game against Philadelphia. And it was around that same time that Trey Johnson was going nuts for Washington. And I was out there during that stretch, and it was sort of like, oh boy, to what's going on. Like this is, you're trying not to overreact, obviously, but and I mean, looks like Trey's going to could potentially be a special player for Washington, and the Wizards had just like a squad, a young squad, just prospects everywhere out in Vegas. And then Kon gets online. It was I think it was the third game against Dallas where Cooper didn't play in the game.
Yeah.
And Kon got up to kind of a slowish start, but they ran a little like pistol action with he and KJ Simpson on the right side of the floor. So like Kon comes up, there's either a little like handoff flip exchange, or he screens for KJ. The ball gets back to Simpson, and then Kon runs off of a flare screen from Ryan Kalkbrenner from Creighton. And he didn't get like a ton of separation on it, but he got just enough. And he hit this kind of like tough, like fading off balance three, like off platform three. And it was just like, it felt like the pressure just like released. Do you know what I mean? And he started to ball after that. Like his defense was good. His offense was great. And then just like the competitiveness that he showed was really on display. I feel like, I don't know how you guys were interpreting all of it, but just from my vantage point of being there for the first couple of days, then watching every game from home after that, just like it sort of felt like everyone in Charlotte's front office had to like be thinking that's exactly what we wanted. Those were the exact expectations. Psycho competitor, like good teammate, really skilled offensive player who just is going to empty the bucket on both ends of the court. So my surprise was relatively low, and I would just say I guess maybe a little pleasantly surprised with just sort of like how well he played after kind of like a tough start out in Vegas.
Yeah, I was wondering if it would take him a little while, because even at Duke, I don't know if you remember this, but he wasn't like great for the first like month or so. He had that really rough game against
whatever. Yeah, that was
against
brutal.
Kentucky was pretty brutal, I believe. And his 3-point shot took a little while to get going. He was shooting short every time. One thing that I've noticed, and I don't know, maybe you can speak to this more, just from kind of like reading and listening to draft expert people, it seems like there's a lot of like misconceptions around his game. Like I just hear people talking about the shooting, and that's all they talk about, right? And I don't hear anything about the ball handling, the finishing, the passing.
Playmaking,
and I also keep hearing that he's like a defensive liability, and I don't agree with that. I don't know how you feel about all that. But
I definitely. So I'll start with the last thing you said, which is defense, and I think you can sort of like branch off in a few different directions, but I don't actually think he's a liability in the sense that I don't think teams can just sort of like pick on him because he's too strong.
Right.
In terms of like, if you're envisioning like isolated matchups, this is not Tyler Hero, right? You know what I mean? Like it's not, he's 220 pounds and he's got Wisconsin strength and he's a crazy competitor. And so you can't just like isolate him and just have someone like back him down. Do you know what I mean? And yes, if it's LeBron James or Giannis, one of the just like God tier players in the NBA, sure, he's, Kon probably gets turned into like roadkill, as do 99.9% of other NBA players. His weakness to me comes sort of like laterally along the perimeter in space one-on-one. I think you can cross him over. You can attack his top foot a little bit. You can get into his feet. You can reject the screen, get downhill. And like, that's where his sort of like lateral speed and like lack of like a high end length at the point of attack one-on-one against, zippy guards. I think that is exploitable, but I don't think it's the sort of like matchup hunting where you're just punishing him with a, sort of like a big wing creator and backing him down. His screen navigation when he's guarding pick and roll is pretty good. And I think he showed that one of his like highlight skills in Vegas was when the Hornets are playing drop coverage guarding pick and roll, and they've got, Kalkbrenner in the deep drop, or they've got PJ Hall, whomever else was playing center for them, they're several feet below the level of the screen. Kon was doing an excellent job in rear view pursuit and like getting around screens and contesting shots from behind. He blocked or altered multiple shots, which I actually am not sure we even saw that at Duke, him doing that kind of stuff. So, and then just as far as like the team assignment defense, which I don't even mean to brush that aside because I think that might be the most important part of it. Like, where are you rotating around? Do you know where you need to be? Can you get to those spots? The Hornets, they play a lot of sort of like different defensive coverages because they'll put their 7-foot shot blocker on whomever the non-shooter is out on the court. And so you've got to be sort of like ready to navigate these different things. And I think Kon's great from that sort of stuff, like the thinking aspects of the game. So I feel pretty good about the defense. I'm sure on some nights, he's going to get lined up against, Tyrese Maxey's going to get him on a switch. Yeah. And like, that's probably not going to look good, but I don't worry about like Paul George, like backing him down. Do you know what I mean? If that's
bullying him.
Yeah, exactly. I worry about that less. And then, I mean, you guys know this, everyone listening to this pod, if they're a Duke fan or whomever, like watched Kon last season or saw him at EYBL or at Wisconsin Lutheran, like, there's way more to this guy's game than just shooting. Like, yes, I think that's probably like his best like singular skill, which is great because I think it's like the singular like most important skill in basketball. Mm-hmm. And I think he was in the conversation for best shooter in the draft with Trey Johnson and maybe Kobe Brea, who from Kentucky, who ended up with the Suns and played very well, and with Malawach out in Vegas Summer League. But Kon's obviously got way more to his game. And I think he showed it at Duke. He showed it in Vegas. Like, he can create out of the pick and roll. He's so good against a variety of different coverages. But we've talked about this multiple times in the pod with you guys. Like, his patience first drop coverage, how he's so good at getting the defender on his hip and taking the ball into the lane, into space, and then just like waiting until the last possible second to make a decision with the ball. And he's just reading the defensive center, right? If the defensive center commits to him, he's throwing a lob. He got Malawach how many dunks last season off that? Mm-hmm. If the defensive center like is worried about the lob and they give him a little bit too much space, he's just going to quick shot it and get it up on the glass. You know what I mean? For a layup. He's not going to blow by you and dunk on guys at the rim, but he's got terrific touch. And he's got a bunch of little like quirky tricks around the basket, I think, to get his shot off. I mean, I don't think he's ever going to be like an amazing at rim finisher off a dribble in the NBA, but I think he's got enough stuff to score enough. Do you know what I mean? And his patience and his passing and his feel is excellent. And the last thing I would just say about the shooting component of it is like his shooting is also not just stand in the corner and wait for Cooper Flag to throw you open. This guy, I would say like maybe the most important part of Duke's offense last season, outside of like what are they doing with Cooper Flag, was Kon's movement and him running off screens and him setting screens and then popping into space, or him setting screens and then running off of another screen. I just thought his movement, the way Duke really featured it, was super impactful and was, I think, a real feather in his cap in terms of like Kon's scalability and malleability. He doesn't need the ball to be like a contributing offensive player. So he's got his limitations, athletically, but I think his dribble, pass, shoot, strength, combination, and feel for the game are all like excellent. And those are his pathways to becoming a really nice NBA player, hopefully.
Does Charlotte have the lob threat that he needs to succeed in the drop coverage there?
Probably not this season. I mean, I think Moussa Diabate, who's heading into, I believe, his third or fourth season, his second season with Charlotte. He's the guy that they found off the scrap heap. People listening to this pod may remember he played at Michigan a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. Like undersized 5, probably 6'10", 230, like, but super, super fast, mobile. And like, he can be a lob guy, but he's not the, like, the Mark Williams, Kon Knueppel, like 7 foot, lob bot. He's not that. And then the other centers are, once upon a time, Mason Plumlee was, a nice, lob threat.
Yeah, but he's at 50 now.
I don't think Mace has those wheels anymore. And Kalkbrenner is like a nice player, and Charlotte's high on him, but he is. I mean, one of the things he does best offensively is probably set screens and roll the rim, but like he's a slow roller, and he's not like Kon threw him some lobs in Vegas, but it's like he's like a catch a lob at the rim and like lay it in type of thing. This is not a guy that you like throw it to the rafters and like let him go get it. And like, Kon's gonna have to like adapt to that. And but he's not the only one. Like LaMelo Ball's a great lob thrower out of the ball screen too. And like they've set him up with no lob threats right now either, other than Diabate. So it's something that everyone on that roster is going to have to sort of like work around, including Kon.
Speaking of the roster, like where does he get buried rotationally here? Like that's my only little bit of concern of like, I thought it was mainly a lot of the stuff they did kind of like just in the off season. Some of the guys they brought in, I thought they made good, like they brought in good guys, but when you think of a number 4 pick, you think of getting slotted in. Duke fans, we go back a little bit myself. I go back a little bit to kind of the Jahlil Okafor situation. I get the game doesn't translate, but you get drafted super high to a team that has all of these bigs and you just get buried and there's no development. Like, is there any threat for that for Kon, or do you think it's good enough and maybe the health of LaMelo or somebody is questionable enough to where he's just going to by default get in there? Or could the number 4 pick be in the G League this year? Like where are we at with Kon, I guess?
I think he's going to be too good to get buried. And I think he's going to be too important to them, both in terms of like what his movement, shooting, passing can unlock for them in terms of their half court offense, and just what he means for the sort of like trajectory of the franchise. That unless he's just luggage, which I don't think he's going to be, you can't bury him, he's going to command minutes by simply like him being passable defensively and him being like a real boost for you offensively. On my Hornets podcast, the Buzzbeat podcast, we've been talking about, potential rotations and stuff for them next season. I feel very confident that you're going to see LaMelo starting at the 1, Brandon Miller at one of the wings, Miles Bridges at the 4. And then it's sort of like the 2 and the 5 are kind of like swing spots. They traded for Colin Sexton in kind of a weird deal for Utah this offseason, where the Hornets, also picked up a second round pick in that transaction. My guess would be like the starting 2 slot is like, that's something between like Sexton and Kon is sort of like my thought. And my guess would be that Colin Sexton has like the inside edge to it because of his experience. He can help LaMelo get off the ball. He's super fast. And the Hornets run an offense that's similar to what to what Colin Sexton was doing out in Utah this past season, past couple of years with Will Hardy. It's also very similar to Duke's offense in a lot of ways in terms of like how they space 5 out, putting the 5 at the wing. So I think that one, it's great that both Kon and Sexton have experience doing that. But like my guess would be, at some point, I don't really know how the center rotation is going to break out. Like, I kind of think they need Diabate to get the most of the minutes and Kalkbrenner's got some upside as well. But I think Kon has a good chance to like work into a starting role, whether it's like day 1 or day like 101. I think he's got a chance to crack a spot. And even if he doesn't start for them, I think he's, they're the first guy off the bench type. And he and Trey Mann are the backup guards. That's the first 2 guards off the bench. And I think they're carrying so many guys on the roster right now because they gave full-time NBA contracts to all 3 of the Sion James, Ryan Kalkbrenner trio, the second round picks those guys that they picked in the second round. They gave both those guys full scale contracts. They're not 2-way players. So I think they're carrying 18 guys on the roster, not including like two-way dudes. So they're going to have to get rid of a few guys. And I'm not sure who that's going to be. I feel pretty confident it's going to be Daquan Jeffries, Pat Connaughton, and then either, Nick Smith Jr. or Spencer Dinwiddie. Like it's going to have to, like, that's what it is. And so I think that'll clear up some of the sort of like, some of the crowdedness in the backcourt. But I do believe Kon's just going to be too good to get buried. And I do think I also believe, I'm forecasting that there's like an important role for him. And my guess is he's going to start at some point this season, whether he's a spot starter or like he's a full-time guy by the middle of the season, I think is the thing that remains to be seen.
Well, I guess it would depend on like what Charles Lee's priorities are and how much they align with the front office, right? Like we've seen, I think, this front office being patient, and it seems like they are prioritizing development and youth, but a coach doesn't always want to do that, right? Because they want to win games. They're worried about their job. I guess it just depends on what he's been told, essentially to do, like what's his job security like, and what do they expect out of him?
Yeah, I think it's I do like the analogy. It's like the front office, they buy the ingredients at the grocery store. The coach is the one that has to like take the ingredients to prepare the meal. And so sometimes those ideologies can be not quite on the same page. I mean, everything seems to be like synchronized with them right now. It's just I think from the outside looking in, from my vantage point, like they would just seem like a normal rebuilding team that's in year 2 of a reset if it wasn't for the last like decade. Do you know what I mean? That preceded the new ownership, the new front office, and the new coaching staff that sort of like all came in, not quite at the same time, but very close to one another. And so I think there is a fair amount of like congruency between and I think all these people are on the same wavelength. When I was in Vegas, I saw Charles Lee and Jeff Peterson hanging out together. Some gumshoe reporting from me there. Coworkers spend time together, but no, I think there is a lot of synergy. And my guess would be that because they're still pretty early in the arc, that like I don't think you would start to see fissures until like next season. Does that make any sense? Where all of a sudden it's year 3. If there's been no growth, like the Kon pick has not hit the way you thought it would, whatever. Like I could see that producing some strife. But I think right now everyone is on like a slow and steady growth arc. And I think they have to be because like there's some good stuff in the door right now in terms of like young players on the roster, future draft picks that they have coming in from the Dallas Mavericks, the Miami Heat, among other teams. But also like if this year goes belly up, then like, there's a decent chance they have to trade LaMelo. And like that would definitely like further it might help their rebuild, but it would also like lengthen it too. So I still think there's a fair amount of optionality and stuff on the table, but right now I feel relatively confident, as confident as like I can be about, anything basketball wise with what at times has seemed to be like a doomed enterprise in the Charlotte Hornets. I think right now, like, again, they have a ways to go. The hard work really does start like now. I should mention they've got first round picks coming in from the Suns too, because of the Richards and Williams trades. But just like it's going to take some time, but like the needle is pointing in the right direction. And like the team building stuff the Hornets have done the last 18 months, like what they did before the 2024 deadline, trading PJ Washington, trading Terry Rozier, trading Gordon Hayward, getting future picks, taking on salaries so they could acquire other picks, drafting guys that they believed in, Tijan Salon last year, Kon Knueppel. Like this, not all of it's been perfect, but some of this has been like very solid, maybe simple, but like team building steps that you would expect for a smaller mid-market team to do to try to rebuild. But it's something that they never did. The Hornets have never had this kind of surplus of picks. You know what I mean? Right. So this is sort of like uncharted territory in many ways for the franchise, but it's like, to me, it's exciting because it just means there are more options now than there ever have been. At any point, I've been covering the Hornets for a decade, basically maybe over a decade now at this point. And like, they've had better teams than this before. I don't know if they've had more like talent and skill on the roster, unrefined, obviously, but also like they've definitely never had like this many like possibilities on the table at this moment. So it's an interesting hinge point for them. I think the next like year to 2 years, just in terms of like what happens with Brandon Miller, what happens with Kon Knueppel, and like is LaMelo a part of this going forward, or does he end up becoming a trade chip at some point for them as well?
Yeah. Well, I know we want to get into Jordan Smith, but before we do, just all those guys that you mentioned, does Sion fit into this at all? I mean, I know that you mentioned he's got a full contract here. Mm-hmm. They seem to be invested in it. I mean, he seems like a guy that you could put in on a low rookie deal and be like, hey, this guy could potentially play anywhere from like 1 through 4, like maybe 5 if you want to get super crazy. But in the NBA, like he could guard 1 through 4, I think. Is that valuable enough? Like, does he have a skill that you think that's enough to get him like in that mix? Or is it just, you got Wendell Moore kind of around as well. They brought him in for a little bit. Like, I don't know, man. Is there a path for Sion?
I mean, the short answer is yes, or at least they would not have used the number 33 pick with some good prospects, still on the table. They would not have used that pick and given him a 3-year contract if they didn't believe in Sion James in some capacity. And look, when you're drafting early in the second round, no one you're taking is a perfect player. And, I think we could sit around for the next 5 to 10 minutes and really like dissect Sion's game. I think everyone on this pod's pretty sort of like well aware of what he can do, what he's good at physically, how he's built. Like the things that are obvious about him are that like he's got a body type that's ready for the NBA with his strength, his speed, at least in a straight line. I'll be kind of curious to see like how his quickness and speed translates to this level. But he's a super unselfish player. He's a great teammate. I think his field defensively, his instincts on that end are really, really good. And I thought he played excellent in Duke's defensive system this past season after being in that sort of like wonky matchup zone that he was in for 4 years at Tulane. And I just thought Sion's team defense was pretty underrated and didn't bear itself out in a ton of blocks and steals. And I think that maybe sort of like underrates some of his impact. I think he's a really good rotator, team defender, got peel switcher, like all of those sorts of things. My concern with Sion is, one, Charlotte just like has like a lot of guys in front of him right now, like in the sort of like guard wing room. It's a little crowded, and he's older for a rookie. So the timeline is, it's compressed. I think my biggest concern though is just sort of like him. There needs to, like, offensively in the NBA, you just have to be able to like, it's not just like shoot it enough if you're sort of like the fifth option type guy, though that is important. But just like there needs to be like a minimum threshold hit in terms of like comfort and like willingness to score the basketball. And sometimes as awesome as Sion is, and he was a nice corner 3-point shooter off the catch for Duke this past season, and his catch and go game is good. And he's an excellent cutter, and he can play in transition, and his like catch and go drives when he sees a hard closeout are good. And obviously he's like a nice connective passer. That's like probably one of his like most fun traits offensively. And I think that is going to be like a boost for him, his just movement and quick decision-making and passing. But like, if he's going to be a guy that like stands in the corner and like plays on the wing and does that kind of stuff for Charlotte, like he just can't be a nothing in terms of like a spacer and a threat with the ball.
Right.
And so I just wish he could have played more in Vegas, honestly. Like I think he hurt his hip in that second game against Philadelphia. Bummer. Would have loved to have seen more of him. I thought he had good moments in both games. I thought his passing was solid, especially in the Philadelphia game. So I'm feeling like, I would say like reasonably good about where things are with him, but just like I need to see the offense a little bit more. And it's like if he comes out and he's confident with the ball and he can hit 30 whatever percent of his threes, like that changes a lot of things, because then you can tap into all the awesome parts of his game, the physicality, the team, the sort of like team first mentality, the feel for the game, the connective passing, the defense, which can be impactful in a few different capacities. And I said this a few minutes ago too, like, Charlotte cross matches defensively a lot. And so, like, do I think Sion James is a guy that could guard some fives? Like, yeah, I do. Because, like, if they're playing a stretch five, they like to take their 4 and put that guy on the 5 so they can switch those actions. And they'll put, the defensive center on a non-shooter. Like, when they played Sacramento in the championship game, they had Ryan Kalkbrenner guarding Devin Carter. You know what I mean? Like, who's a 6'2" guard. Kalkbrenner's a 7'1" So they've taken that sort of like Joe Mazzulla. I mean, Charles Lee was an assistant for Joe Mazzulla, and they've brought that sort of like creative approach to it. So sometimes I think Sion's defensive versatility, his communication skills, and the fact that he played in a couple of different defenses, including this like weird matchup zone at Tulane, like maybe that sort of like has helped his wiring a little bit on that end. So I don't know. Second round pick. It's an uphill battle. It's not necessarily a glamorous road to like, a second contract in the NBA and carving out, a roster of like a lengthy roster spot, but he's definitely got a chance. And clearly this franchise likes him and is invested in him too. So he should feel backed and supported in that way. And I'm sure he'll love having, Kon in Charlotte with him as well.
Yeah, it was really cool for them to take it for sure. At 33 too. I mean, that's not, I was thinking somewhere in the 40s probably for Sion. So at 33, you would hope there's some investment there. But
the word on the street was that like Charlotte really wanted a like physical guard in the second round, and so there were a couple of names that were worth highlighting, and he just quickly was sort of like on the short list for me after that. It's with one of those second round picks.
Yeah. Now, what you said about his offense is why I was kind of a little bit bummed that Denver didn't have a second round pick this year. I wanted him to go somewhere where they would make the offense really easy for him, like just cut.
Just
cut and dunk, be Bruce Brown.
Essentially. Run the floor, let Jokic find you. Yeah, I mean, the four of us on this pod might look okay, like cutting and moving around.
Oh yeah, I'll break my nose a couple of times not seeing the ball, but like,
around the big fella. Yeah, I mean, Sion would have been, honestly, he would have been a fun guy to have played next to like Flip. You know what I mean? If those guys had been at Duke together, obviously, like he and Cooper, and I think he and Malik had like nice chemistry. I think starting with that Arizona game, the game in Tucson, where Malik hit him for a couple of those cut dunks off that little like split action out of the corner. Obviously Malik Brown, no one is Jokic, but Malik Brown's similar, like a high post passing hub, and I think Sion is like a natural fit with those types of guys.
Yeah, the risk, like it can't, like not just high post, like a risky high post passer, right? Because Malik's gonna have some turnovers, but he's gonna throw some passes that just, if you get it through, it's buckets, right? It's money, but at times it can be a little lethal there as well. But I think for guys like that, man, you just got to give them the green light to be like, dude, if you see it, you got to go for it.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that Sion can crack, but I know for sake of time here, fellas, we'll just go ahead and switch gears a little bit. A really big switch here. So instead of the Hornets, now we're going to move back into the high school ranks, folks. We're going to talk a little Jordan Smith Jr. here. Brian just recently wrote a nice article for us at Devil's Den, really breaking down his game, talked a little bit about high school, a little bit about Team USA, some AAU stuff in there. We just had Jeff on, and so I think I want to lead with that. So we just had Jeff Goodman on. And he talked a little bit about Jordan Smith, and basically the idea for him was like, I keep watching this guy and he's really good, but then I keep seeing like number 2 player in the class. And it's like, wow, like I don't know if he's that, but it is a weak class. And I don't know anyone that I would put in front of him every time I see him. So for you, Brent, like, is he the number 2 player in this class? And if so, like, what does that even really mean to you in this class? Like, where are we projecting him out?
Yeah, it's probably, my guess is like he's probably closer to like 5 or 6, but I see the case for him, you know what I mean? And it's honestly, you could take some of the stuff we were probably saying about Sion and Kon and apply it to Jordan. He's a guy that's obviously been on radars for a long time. He's been on East Coast college basketball radars for a while. He's been on Duke radars for a while, just given where he plays and who his teammates were a couple of seasons ago at Paul VI. And it's like, I see it with him, and I get why people evaluating him would fall in love with like the defense, which is, I think, pretty special, with the length, which like is one of those things that when you watch him play, you're like, man, he does have this sort of like uncanny ability to like get deflections and just sort of like show up in passing lanes and blow up dribble handoffs, that kind of stuff. And then, you read he's got, +6, +7 wingspan, basically. You're like, okay, that definitely like explains some of the sort of like uncanny ability to like, churn up deflections and create steals, that kind of stuff. He obviously has this like team first winners mentality, which I guess in like sort of like a weaker class can kind of help you, you know what I mean? Sort of like float more to the top, just because you're going to win games and people are going to like to watch you play and like playing with you, like all of that sort of stuff. I think sort of like stands out with him. And I think part of it too is that like I could see someone like Caleb Holt, you know what I mean, usurping him at some point in time, but like just like where Smith is now in terms of like his development arc, he's just like a little bit more like ready made. And so maybe he has sort of like I don't want to do the sort of like, higher ceiling, higher floor, lower ceiling, like that kind of thing, but just like he's a little bit more ready made. And I don't know how you could not watch him play for Team USA and just be like so impressed, but with his ability just to like do whatever Tommy Lloyd asked him this summer. I don't remember who was coaching the team last summer when he was playing with the Boozers, but just like his ability to just like do whatever you want. And I think to me, it kind of reminded me a little bit of like during the Olympics last season, like Devin Booker got a lot of praise for like scaling down his usage offensively, being like a spot up guy, being like a tough as nails defender. And when you watched Team USA play at the U19 World Cup this summer, like he was just like the perfect complement for like the starting 1 and 3 group of Michael Brown Jr. and AJ DeBanza. Like you needed and Koa Pete at the 4, who like, plays with the ball and handles it and like, gets a lot of usage and stuff too. So like Smith was just like the perfect complement for that group. But then when you watch him outside of that context, you can see that he does have some wiggle and some creation to his game and has some mid-range scoring. So I do worry about the size a little bit long term. I do worry about sort of like the offensive creation a little bit long term. And I think that this point now, like the catch and shoot 3, even that is still like not fully baked yet. But everything else is like pretty, the stuff that you do feel confident in is like really impactful. I mean, the defense is awesome. His athleticism, his length, his transition game, his willingness to move without the ball, his ability to sort of like find gaps as a cutter, all really, really good. It's just like, those are the traits I think you would think of with like the number 22 player in the class. You know what I mean? Not quite the number 2. And I'll just say this too, like, I have not done like a full evaluation of the 2026 class yet. So I know certain guys in it pretty well. There's a lot of guys that are still sort of like mysteries to me at the moment. So we'll be looking forward to doing more of that evaluation as time goes along. I have watched a lot of Smith. I like him a lot. 2 seems a little high for him, but like I definitely get the appeal with him as far as this like team first guy who can guard a bunch of positions and is scalable offensively, can play with the ball, can play without it.
Can he get to being like a lead guard though? Do you think that there's enough from what you've seen to, because to me it's like if 6'2", 6'3", if you can be the lead guard, that works. I mean, I know you mentioned in your article you talk about Drew Holiday, which I don't, Drew's been a lead guard before. I think you would say ideally you pair him with the Derek Whites of the world, or you pair him with someone else who can kind of also maybe combo with you a little bit. Like, can Jordan be that guy? Can he be a guy where it's like, hey, you're going to have the ball in your hands and you're going to be getting us into our stuff? Or do you like him more at the next level as kind of a safety valve, more off ball, can do some initiation and half court type stuff, but not relied upon that way? Or can he get there? Do you think he can get there in the college level?
Yeah, I think so. A couple of things. I do think, and it's like, the caveat with like with a comparison like Drew Holiday, it's like a little, Holiday is like a Hall of Fame player who's won titles with multiple teams, playing different roles, and has won multiple
ultimate connector.
But just like, there is some overlap there with a guy like Smith, which that was sort of the thing I was trying to draw, was that these are like super malleable players that are also like, fire hydrants guarding at the point of attack defensively too. Yeah, he probably is better suited right now for a role where he would get to play next to like a larger, like A1 creator, whether that's like Cason Wallace, or like, what Cason Wallace is in Oklahoma City next to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams, or what Drew Holiday was for a couple of years in Boston next to Tatum, you know what I mean? And Jaylen Brown, these like apex wing creators. My guess would be right now he's like a little better suited for that sort of like combo-esque role where he's, you're going to have some percentage of your plays are going to be routed through him, pick and roll. And maybe you don't mind if he's creating late in the shot clock, but like, he's not like a, 25% usage, 25% assist rate kind of guy. I'd like to see more of the like live ball creation with him as like a playmaker and a passer. I like some of the like the live ball scoring he can do because he's strong, he's decisive with the ball, he's got long arms, he's got touch to multiple levels of the court. So I like those components of his game, and like that sort of like live ball mid-range scoring, that is like the province of star creators, for sort of like lack of a better term. But I think for him to really be like to like long term be the kind of guy that you can like route a lot of offense through, whether that was in college somewhere or that was longer term in the NBA, I need to see a little bit more to sort of like get on board with that. Like you watch someone like Michael Brown and immediately you're like, oh my God. And like Michael Brown might be like a little, I mean, I really like him a lot, but I could also see like, I get there's like a numbers argument against him, but like when you watch Brown and you see his pace and his like command of the pick and roll, you're just like, yeah, this guy is like, he's either going to be a primary or it's not going to work. You know what I mean? And like Smith has probably like less likelihood being a primary, but he's got more potential outcomes as sort of like an off ball guy too. So I like him a lot. And I could see him being awesome in Duke's system, playing next to Caden Boozer, or playing the Sion role, or, playing the Tyrese, the role that Tyrese had this past season, something like that. I think all of those things can make a fair amount of sense, or playing the role that Wendell Moore had his junior year, where you sort of like floating between different positions. And that to me feels a little bit more better suited. But obviously I get if he's going to get the number 2 rating in the class where he is currently, like you're probably expecting him to be a little bit more dominant with the ball.
Dynamic or a little bit. Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm a little skeptical of some components of it, but I feel pretty good about at least sort of like the dribble scoring aspects.
There's some Nolan Smith there to me a little bit too. That might be a type before you were doing this stuff. I get it. But like Duke fans will probably, I mean, some of it's a lazy comp. Maybe it's you see a 6'2" combo guard and it's like, okay, it can play a little bit of both. But I think for me, Nolan, his senior year, kind of when Kyrie went down, he had to go to the point, but he was still more of a scoring guard in that role. I think that's where I'm at. I feel like a little bit with Jordan. It's hard for me because I'm in love with this game. Like I love the kid, but obviously
he rocks.
I know what John does with positional size, and I'm starting to kind of be like, well, 6'3" at the quote unquote lead guard spot is fine, right? But when you start to slide down,
the only thing is the wingspan. Like that's
That's
does make him functionally bigger, right?
6'5" basically with that. Yeah.
He's 200 pounds with a 6'8", 6'9" wingspan. Like that that levels it a little bit, you know.
Yeah, that plays. Yeah, that plays
the
up.
comp I've been making is and maybe this is not a good one, I don't know, but just in my mind I've had like shorter Justice Winslow because of like just the kind of things he does, you know, ferocious on the boards, great defender, great team defender, great on-ball defender, good cutter, all that kind of stuff. I don't know what you think of that.
No, I like it. I definitely see it's the physicality and like the team sort of like team first mentality. And this also sort of, you know, like similarly, like the question marks with the jump shot and sort of like, well, how good is he with the ball in his hands too? Because like, you know, there was a thought that Justice, you know, heading into his pro career might be a guy that you could run offense through. And, you know, he had moments in Miami, but it never
Spo
really
tried, man.
Spo
tried it, man. Spo tried everything he could to
he tried him at every position. In fact,
he
tried him at center. He tried him at
one point. Like it was, Oh, Justice. I think though, to me, what I like about the comp is that it's rare that you can have a guy. And honestly, to me, that's where Kon was so good. You can have a guy that you can put in multiple different roles, and they can play each of that role at like such a high level. Like if you need him to slide down and kind of like decoy on the wings, run some actions over here, you can do it. If I need you to be like shot hunting at the 2 and like hungry, you can do it. And like, that's hard to just be able to pivot and to switch into different roles like that. When you talk about the defense, though, I think that's like, obviously it pops. It's the first thing you lead off in with this article, but you just don't see that much from like a 17-year-old kid. Like you see good individual defense from 17-year-olds, from high schoolers all the time. You can see great individual defense. To have the team defense piece, which to me is way more important, but to have the team defense understanding of just actions and switches and like time of possession and like who's on the floor and like what we need to do to get into the net, like that's to me been like super impressive. And I have to think that Shire is salivating over something like that. Of you bring that in, we can still trot out a top 5 defense. Like that tracks really hard for me. Like, do you see him as just a dog point of attack level defender? Or do you think still, again, kind of like the offense, what he's able to do, just like picking off passes from the wing is you kind of would rather have him over there? Or is the point of attack stuff worth it?
I think you're going to I think with him, it's like, it's all the above to an extent. I think, you know, no matter where he goes, he's going to be in a scheme that's switching 1 through 4, you know, at a minimum. So he's going to be switching around and guarding different guys. He's perfect for that. You know, the length, the strength, the compete level, the instincts. I think, you know, he can be most impactful in an off-ball capacity. I think that's just sort of like how basketball works too. Like you can be more helpful on a more frequent basis, like in gaps and on the glass. And he can do that stuff very well for a 6'2" guard, in part because of his length. But I think his screen nav is good. I think his strength at the point of attack, like the fact that he can do that and like can be a shutdown guy. I mean, there was definitely like a reason why in the game against Germany, like after Christian Andersen got going, like he got the assignment, you know, like Tommy Lloyd knew what time it was, you know, it's like enough, Jordan, go guard him. So it's like, the fact that he has that in his game is kind of awesome. I don't think he's like, I was in love with Reese Beekman when he was at Virginia, and super smooth, super quick at the point of attack. He was also an excellent, you know, off-ball backside defender. He got a ton of, you know, pick 6 interceptions doing that. But just like
insane,
he was incredible, and like his fluidity at the point of attack was just absolutely amazing. I'm not sure like Jordan is like laterally like that like gifted in that way, but like he's really good getting over the top of screens and navigating. And so I think he can do it all. I think you saw Sion this past season at Duke sort of like take on, some point of attack defense, but also be like an amazing team defender too. And like, honestly, just seeing where your like defense is going, not just in the NBA, because this stuff is trickling down to college now too. Like you see all the stuff Duke does defensively, and they're not the only ones, but just like how versatile they're asking these guys to do so many things and cover so much ground now. Like, how could you not want a guy like Jordan Smith? Because he'll be in the right spot all the time. He can guard every position. He's going to create steals. He's going to rebound. He's going to block some shots. Because he can do that too. He closes down space quickly. I just, to see like all the things that he could do on that side of the court is really, really impressive. And again, not always like the domain of a 6'2" combo guard that's a top 3 prospect in his class. You know what I mean? Like that's, so even for me, I have to kind of like invert a little bit how I'm thinking about that. Like, I'll say this too. And like most of the time where I'm writing those kinds of scouting reports, like I start with the physical profile and then I usually get into offense after that. And there was a reason with Smith why when I started that profile, I started physically and then I went to the defense and then finished with the offense, because that to me is the thing that really, really does stand out. And it's where you get to see these, you hear there was a thing, The Athletic published a piece a couple of weeks ago around Peach Jam about how I think CJ Moore did the poll for them about how he was the player that college coaches most wanted to coach. I think was sort of like the way it was phrased. And his team defense is like when you get to see some of those like hustle plays, sort of like bear out. You see him dive for loose balls. You see him make the extra rotation. You see him close out at 110 miles per hour and try to block the shot. It really like shines through there. And shows up in like meaningful, impactful ways because he's got like great defensive instincts and he's got really good length too.
Yeah. And I think that was the most impressive thing about our defense. Really our defense under John. Like I was a little, and like, look at me being critical of K, right? But like I was a little critical of late stage K when I was like, man, we're asking these guys to really extend. And it looks like if they beat the initial, I mean, we are just scramble mode back there, which just like it takes a lot of energy to do that type of stuff. Like I thought John did a really good job, really across 3 years of being able to apply pressure without gambling, really without exposing kind of your rim, which, that was my critique under K. Is like, man, we gave up a lot of layups at the rim there for a little bit. Like for Jordan to come into that, to me, it just has to be such a clear fit. Like it just has to be such a perfect marriage that I see. I think there's going to be room on the roster there. We talked about it a little bit, but if Caden sticks around, like, is that the pairing that you like there? Does shooting matter at that point? Or do you just have enough just kind of like defensive versatility and just kind of athleticism there? Or are you concerned at all about, like, that would be I guess I'll go ahead and I'll sell myself. Like, that would be my concern of you bring in that backcourt and you have like 2 sub 35% 3-point shooters on like low-ish volume. And you're kind of like, ooh, like unless Slim is coming back to shoot 15 a game, where's that coming from? Like, are you concerned at all about the scalability of the shooting at the next level, or where does that kind of?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, that would be the sort of like most obvious fly in the ointment of that backcourt pairing. But I mean, I would still say, if I was coaching at Duke, I would still say sign me up for it.
Oh yeah, super sexy.
Those guys are both amazing players, and winners and high feel. Like I think that's one of those things where you're like, you'll just figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, there's 3 other spots out there on the court. Like, let's just jam as much shooting into those spots, if we need to. And I think the other hope would be is that the plan would be like in the next 15 months, does one of those guys or both, make some sort of like leap as a shooter. You know what I mean? If you watch Jordan shoot, I don't think there's like anything like structurally flawed. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's got a nice compact release, quick. He doesn't really shoot off movement a lot from what I've seen, like from distance, but again, that's something that you can build and you can hone. So yes, it would obviously be the concern, but just from like a talent team for, like, you want to talk about, like, those are two of the best, like, winners in their individual, like Smith might be the best winner in the 2026 class. And, like, I mean, you guys know this, but, like, the Boozers were just, like, insane.
They are winning. They are winning. You look it up and
crazy
that's
winners.
Yeah.
Crazy winners. So I would say, like, you can think of so many good traits that those two guys would have together, and defensively they would just blanket you, and their movement and their cutting and their heady basketball plays together would be awesome. And so even if the shooting was a concern, I would still say every day of the week, twice on Sunday, try to figure it out. But I think there's a good chance, there's at least some chance that one of those guys, if not both, sort of like are going to get better as shooters. You know, it's like it's sort of existential for those guys, right? In terms of, like, their advancement to the NBA, that they're going to have to take leaps as shooters. And so I think you've got to kind of bank on that necessity too.
Yeah. I mean, we've been on him for a while. I mean, for Duke fans, like, I was really excited to have you on for this because it's one of the, like, first real big like kind of looks at it. But I mean, Duke's been recruiting this kid for a couple of years now, I think, like at least 1.5, like, really strong. You know,
that Paul 6 pipeline is
pipeline, man. First off,
what two teammates, man.
what a program in general. I mean, they've just been beating guys into the ACC in Big East, in Big Ten now for a couple of years. Ben Hammond, who's the returning sophomore point guard at VT, you know, he was on that team. Garrett Suntra, who's like a stretch 4, stretch 5 at Notre Dame, was on that team 2 years ago. That also had Pat Gongba and Darren Harris. And that was like I remember when it was probably like last spring, summer. That's when I'll usually try to, like, get film in on, like, the incoming freshmen in the ACC. And so I was watching those PVI teams to watch Darren, and especially, like, you know, when Pat came back for the Chipotle Nationals. But Smith jumps off the screen. You know, as soon as you throw those games on, you're like, who's this guy? Who's 23? Who's that? And you're like, oh, he's a sophomore playing with them. And then that summer, seeing him play with Team USA at the U18s, and then again this season with Team USA. Very impressed with his development arc so far, and clearly he's a guy that can fit in. And I mean, it seems almost like too good to be true, you know, with the guy with his pedigree in the pipeline between that school and
that pipeline is, I mean, they became like the Oak Hill for Duke of like the early aughts. Like, Oak Hill was just we were just cribbing everything we could get from there. And now, Paul, I mean, we've got like this. If Jordan came, I think it'd be like the 7th, 6th, or 5th, or 6th.
Roach, Harris, Gonga.
Yeah, 5 in like as many years. Like, that's pretty damn good. But all right, folks, I know, like, we're getting late here. Brian, I know you got some other stuff to do. We're going to get out of here. But before we do that, just real quick, talk to us a little bit about the Deep Drop, what's going on over there, what you're getting into, kind of branching out a little bit, and obviously any other kind of basketball related content you got.
Yeah, appreciate it. So the first episode of that went up last Thursday or Friday. So in terms of, like, actual, it was probably like August 7th or 8th, something like that. That's being done over at Pack Pride. So there's a bit of a NC State slant at the moment, but I'm hoping that can branch out, move in other directions throughout the season. But my first guest for it was Patrick Stacy, who recently hired to be a part of Will Wade's staff. He was the GM at Wyoming with Sonny Wicks last season. And now he's the assistant GM at NC State. But young guy, worked in finance for a little bit, then worked in sort of like basketball scouting and analytics. So a guy that, and, you know, you guys would love talking hoops with him too, right? Because he's just speaking a language that's, like, familiar. And he was kind enough to come on and talk with me for, you know, half hour or so. And it was cool to get sort of like a little bit more insight into some of the numbers that teams are, and he's not coming out and saying like, proprietary information or anything like that.
Sure.
But just like sort of like seeing the advancement in the sort of like ubiquity, the like pervasiveness of advanced numbers and how that's like flooding more and more into the sport. It's still like sort of like baby steps here, but very fun talking about, certain player types and in numbers with him, and went through some other sort of like concepts, the importance of film, the importance of having someone like him on staff to help communicate these numbers and be a liaison with the coaching staff and the players, like all that kind of stuff. So very cool. I'm hoping to have more guys who are sort of in similar positions like that around the ACC, around the country, come on and talk hoops and try to like get into sort of like, the nitty gritty a little bit. And again, like he was very kind and willing to like engage with those topics. Just like, I've been able to, you guys have had John on your pod, you ask him these questions. I've talked with John after a lot of post-game press conferences. Another guy that's sort of like willing to like go, he's not going to give you like the secret formula or whatever, but like is very,
you see the twinkle in his eye. You see when I heard you ask some of those questions, and I'll see where he wants to like kind of like nerd out, and then he has to be like, okay, let me. But
it's really cool. It's just cool that there are guys like that, and that these they're willing to come on and talk with us too. So that's going on there. I don't know when the second episode's going to be. I don't know who the guest is. Like I'm juggling a few different things at the same time right now, but that was really fun. And I think it was a pretty evergreen episode. So for anyone that wants to check it out and just sort of like get a little more insight into sort of like how teams are slowly but steadily, using numbers in film to inform more of their decision-making and scouting, and how that is also trickling down into portal evaluations too. So all pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah. And obviously you've done stuff over the summer on Dame Sarr, Jordan Smith Jr. There's some stuff on Isaiah Evans. There's stuff out there that y'all can go find as well.
Nick Menia. Yeah. Did a deep dive. That's up at the Devil's Den as well. So been writing a lot this off season, been watching a lot of film. I was telling Raul we were texting about this the other day. I've been watching a lot of like Utah Jazz film just to kind of get a little bit more of a feel for that type of like 5-out offense. I saw it a lot at Duke and covering the Hornets last season, but just like very cool stuff coming out of like the Will Hardy, I mean, like a basketball factory out there. And it was fun to see too, because I listened to a clip a couple of weeks ago, of Will Hardy. He's at a clinic and he's talking about some of the ways that like the Jazz sort of like condition and train their players to like get to these certain spots on the floor in 5-out. They basically they set up cones in the middle of the floor, and they have everyone like run outside of the cone. So everyone's fanning out to these spots along the perimeter. And then when I was at the open practice for Duke the other day, they weren't doing that. But the vantage point I had, it was kind of like behind one of the goals. And it was very fun to sort of like see the way that they have the behind the basket angle and to see like how they're always fanning out. And you've always got, Pat, Malik wasn't playing in the game, but just like the fives running the slot on the left side of the floor. Everyone else is going to kind of like fill in. And it was very fun to see all the different ways they were using, Cam. They used him in a dozen different capacities, in the span of a couple of 8-minute scrimmages. So doing all that. So yeah, I would say if you don't already, please subscribe to my Substack page at Split the Action. I have also am going to be contributing this season to Basket Under Review, which is like the Trilly Donovan project that launched last month. That's got a lot of other, Will Warren, a lot of other sort of like, big time college basketball contributors. Some stuff is free on there. I published an article on Malik Brown a couple of weeks ago. I've got another one coming up soon on another front court guy in the ACC. So I won't be writing just about Duke over there, but it's a very cool project. Some stuff is free. Some stuff is subscription based, but it's been very fun getting immersed there and spending a little bit of time on the Trilly Discord recently. There's a pretty big, Duke community up there as well. So I will be contributing for them this season, periodically throughout the year too. And there's going to be a few more pieces up there between now and the start of the season as well. So that's a really cool project. Like I'm thrilled to have been asked to be a very small piece of it at the start here, because it's cool to see something that's dedicated to just college hoops specifically. So you can find me at all of those places. You can find me on Twitter, bgeis_bird as well, tweeting out numbers and clips and links to stuff.
Yeah, just did something about Coop too. So that was a little heartbreak there in August. Wasn't ready for that again. But it's all good.
Yeah, I gotta empty the chamber with stuff. I've got a lot of stuff that I banked with them that I it just sort of meant to put out during the season and didn't quite get to. So I gotta empty it a little bit here. But I can be willing to bet you're gonna see Cam used in some of that stuff throughout the year. So throughout next season.
Yeah, no, we'll get into that a little bit too. Obviously, we'll probably have you back on earlier in the season. We'll get into the Herminia stuff a little bit more then. We could spend quite a bit of time talking about Cam Boozer. I think that's going to continue to grow, and buzz is going to continue to kind of build for that. Obviously, folks, if you haven't checked it out, we recommend going and looking back some of our recent podcasts too. So we had Jeff Goodman on recently. We did part 3 of our player previews about Cam Boozer, Malik Brown, Pat Gongba, and obviously earlier in the summer we had Coach Shire on. So definitely check that out. He gave us almost an hour of his time, which you don't get a whole lot of from Coach Speak. So that was pretty cool. Shouts to Coach for that one. And we appreciate you all. Rate, review, subscribe. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can find us on YouTube at TheDevilsDen.com YouTube page. You can email us, TheDevilsDenPod@gmail.com, and keep the faces strong and the verb high.